Mike Holliday, welcome to the fish house in the mill house.
Man, happy to be here. Pretty cool place, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. Lot of fish stories in this house.
I'll bet. A lot of memories.
Yeah, you brought me something interesting for the papas today.
Yeah, a little tropical Red Bull.
Just to set the scene.
Oh, we don't want you falling asleep on us. I know you're old and
cranky.
You tend to take naps in the middle of things.
So normally it's with
Orange
OJ
juice,
too,
right?
right?
OJ, yeah.
What do you call it? What you were saying?
Orange Crush. Yeah. So up in Maryland, the summer drink is either vodka or rum with orange juice and Sprite. And this is just a little different take on it. It sort of has the,
What the hell? I have no papas.
orange juice and Red Bull. Are you even old enough?
Yeah, you old enough? Yeah.
You think this is Bahamas or something?
How old do you think I am?
23.
I'm 28.
It's
Come
a good
on,
thing.
28 tomorrow, right?
Dude,
I remember fishing with you when I was probably 17.
Yeah. It's a good thing to look younger as you get older. You want to look older when you're younger as you get older.
I know.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Here, Dad, put that back.
Well, you enter the home and hand us this book, Mexico Returns, right? Here we go. Traveling cross country. Ah, fuck. The first two words.
You know what? It's very irreverent. And
Perfect.
It's meant to be that. If you want to read a book on fly fishing, stories that are very serious.
Semi-true or true?
There's some true parts in there, like,
Bait colorful.
there's a piece on getting a vasectomy. There's a guy who's going to get a vasectomy, and I just kind of shot him straight.
write
This is
this-
what to expect.
Is this what you write from experience?
Some of it's the majority of it's totally made up. When I worked at Florida Fishing Weekly, we would have breaks in the office and people would go out and smoke cigarettes. I went on the internet and I would go on the Drake website and just mess around with people. And that website is very difficult, for lack of a better term. You need to have a good sense of humor. You need to not take things too seriously.
Thick skin.
Yeah, very thick skin.
But just to set the standard, it was before all the social media crap. That was where people and the fishermen went to chat. Was the Drake.
Way before, yeah.
And to talk shit.
Yep.
Was it a place to complain or just talk shit and have fun?
Not really to complain, although, people did get beat up there on a regular basis.
Right.
For most of it, it was just a place for guys to sort of release. A lot of industry folks, a lot of writers in the fly fishing realm are there, all under pseudonyms. You're
Right.
Most people don't know who you are when you're there. And, I'd just go on there and mess with people on a regular basis.
For how many years?
This is probably over the course of 3 or 4 years.
And what was your best spoof, if you will?
Oh God. I sent somebody up into the mountains in Hawaii
And have never been there yourself?
Oh no, never been there. No. And
They're taking this.
telling
They're
him-
taking you seriously.
Telling them who to ask for, and like if you're gonna fish, like you go fish this one pool, but before you get into the pool, you want to coat your legs with Astroglide. Because the pool has mud in it, and the mud will make you itch. But if you put Astroglide on your legs, you won't itch.
Beautiful.
And it was-
You're one of those guys.
The idea was to
You're
kind
a
of
sick man.
send people on different expeditions
Adventures.
that were totally made up. And in theory, if they caught fish, that was great.
Did they ever respond to your information?
I never got feedback as far as went and did it.
Right.
I would just kind of lay out the story. This is what you got to go do.
And this is a book, Mexico Returns, about all your posts
So
and stories.
we all posted on there, and just different posts. And somebody gathered a bunch of the posts and combined it into a book and printed it.
Awesome. And you can find this on Amazon.
You can. I got a lot of grief for that book from my ex-wife.
Woolly Bugger Press.
Woolly Bugger Press out of North
How
Carolina.
apropos. What, so your wife at the time
Well,
took it too seriously?
I was editing it, yeah, and she read it, And she said, what the hell is this?
This is the dark side.
And I swear to God, it's very dark. It's very irreverent. It's sophomore humor, guy humor. And she had me go through a therapist because
she did.
Oh yeah, she's like, you hate women, and you need to really see somebody.
I'm surprised she didn't hold you accountable to go see somebody.
She did.
Yeah,
she made me go. She made me go to a therapist.
I thought you were saying. See, I have bad hearing. I thought she was saying she had to go see a therapist.
No, she sent me
with you.
She sent me, and therapist was like, "All right, you're just joking around."
Is this book something of like a writer's dream because you wrote for Florida Weekly? Where else have you written?
Well, it started out with Miami Herald,
right?
When I was 26, sort of fell into that job.
Did you study this in college, writing?
No, I went to school for aquaculture, and got out of school from aquaculture, and basically I had 3 job offers. I could go to Belize and raise shrimp for $6 an hour, and all the cormorants I could shoot. I could go to
and all the cormorants you could shoot.
I could go to Seattle and raise salmon for $6.25 an hour. All the eagles I could photograph, or I could go to work on the beach as a lifeguard for $14 an hour, and all the ways I could surf.
And all the hot chicks that walk by.
Didn't say that.
and you took the lifeguard job.
I did, and
because you were you were a surfer.
I was a surfer, yeah, and loved the job. While I was working on the beach, I got offered a job at the Miami Herald. I was working in a tackle shop, and Jan Fote, who wrote for the Miami Herald at the time, came out to do a story on snook fishing on the beach, and I took her out and we snook fished and had a good time. And a couple of days later, she came to interview me at my lifeguard tower for the story. And then about a month later, she came out and said, you're very articulate, you know a lot about fishing. I think you'd be a good candidate for this job. She was getting ready to move to the Palm Beach Post, and back in that day, the way you move forward in the newspaper business was you didn't get raises. You got 3% a year raise, but your competition would steal you, and that would be your $10,000 bump.
Huh.
And you kept moving from paper to paper to paper as your competitions grew. And she was moving to the Palm Beach Post from the Miami Herald, and she said, I told him I would find somebody to replace me, and I just think you'd be a good person to do it. So she had me come in, and I did a dummy article, and they loved it. And they really, all honesty, they hired me because of her recommendation. There were a lot of people who applied for that job.
Right.
And I had zero experience. I didn't know how to type. I chicken pecked, 2 fingers.
Wow.
And we wrote on these old monochrome coyotes, no spell check, it's just a word processor. And, my vocabulary wasn't good. I knew nothing about sources and AP style or anything like that. And they hired me.
How long did you have that job?
About 4 years.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Was it hard? Not being a natural writer? Because I know that the small few things that I write, it takes me forever.
Okay.
Because I'm not a natural writer per se.
So I didn't have any writing experience. I wrote the way I spoke and just started doing it. And I really think you got to write about 1 million words before it becomes natural. And then all of a sudden you find your voice. Once you find your voice, everything just flows.
What did you write about in the Miami Herald? Fishing, serious issues or fun stuff?
Primarily fishing, outdoors. I had a whole outdoor page.
Did you ever meet Carl Hyacin when he was working there, or still does, I think?
He was down so I wrote on the Treasure Coast. I wrote Treasure Coast in Palm Beach, and he wrote down in the main office. I've never met Carl.
Do you read his books?
I read all his stuff.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome. We fished tournaments against each other.
He's got a great mind.
He's unbelievable.
It just free flows. And I can tell you, from experience, when you get that way to where you have your voice, you just sit down and
it flows.
You really don't know what's coming out.
It's like fly fishing.
You have no idea what's coming. It's flowing and coming out of you, and then you sit back and you go, wow, that came out great. And you have no idea. You're writing a story, and then all of a sudden you kill somebody off without planning it.
Was there ever a time? When I think about writing, I wonder, in the certain books that I've really fallen in love with, like Moby Dick. That's the greatest fishing book of all time.
It's my very favorite book.
It's unbelievable.
Herman Melville was amazing. And his vocabulary was amazing. The story itself is amazing.
Oh, I have chills on my body. I tell Nikki, you've got
favorite book.
It's a hard book to read. You got to pay attention.
Well, so Melville writes in a style, very old style that was common back in the 1800s. Much like when you read Frankenstein with Mary Shelley, very difficult to read, very long run-on sentences, and you'll read a page or 2 pages and not know what you just read.
Oh, absolutely.
And then later in the book, it kind of comes to you. You go, "Wow,
it's almost kind of like McGuane with 92 in the Shade."
Very similar. You're correct. Very
All of
similar.
a sudden, he goes into this dark cloud over here for a little bit.
Jim Harrison will do the same thing too.
You got to pay attention.
Yeah, it's 5 pages of dialogue, and then he wakes up and it was a dream.
Did you ever read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand?
I did not.
Oh my God, Howard Rourke. He was an architect.
Put that down.
Yeah. Oh my, it's one of the classics. But Howard Rourke would go into this conversation during a trial, and it would be like 25 pages. It would be one thought. And I just find writing to be fascinating. And I was always wondering whether these great writers ever struggled with stories. Did they struggle with how to write a thought? Or was it just so easy that it's like us fly casting, it's easy? And with writers, I always kind of wonder, do you ever get a writer's cramp where you don't have any creativity and you just go dead? And it takes a little bit, maybe something, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden, you got it.
I think when you hear about the writer's block, I think a lot of times it's like forced writing. Like today I need to write.
Yes.
And most writers write, today I want to do 3 pages or I want to do X amount every day. So when they get there, there's days when your creativity is just not there. You only have so much. And you try and force it as opposed to just, okay, well, today I'm not going to write.
Right.
I'm going to do something different.
Because I called Carl Hyacin recently, and we were speaking, and I was saying, I was kind of like venting on some stuff in the fishing world. And I said, "What are you up to?" He said, I'm breaking my ass trying to construct a paragraph." And I found that kind of interesting. One of the great writers.
Well, that may also be like he may have the thought and where he wants to go with it, but the verbiage isn't rolling out exactly how he wants it.
Right.
And you'll find the more you write, the more precise you try to write, and the more you care about how each word comes out and forms into the sentence. So, he just may have been stuck on just trying to get that sentence, how he sees it in his mind correctly, that when you read it, you'll see it the same way.
Right.
And, it's all interpretational. When I write something, that tree is yellow over there, when you read the yellow tree, you may be thinking of a completely different yellow tree than I am.
Right.
So
that's the imagination with reading.
That's the fun part about it.
It is exactly right. Well,
but most once they find a voice, you can pick a subject that they don't know anything about. You can say, "Can you give me 2,000 words on the top of that Papa's Pilar bottle?"
Or that rooster
and make
on
it,
the front.
How do you want it? Do you want it funny? Do you want it anecdotal? Do you want it sad? I can just sit down and write it.
Right.
It's just very easy.
I just read this book with McGuane, Something Clouds. I should remember the title a bit better than that. But it's a book filled with short stories. And it's just absolutely amazing. The creativity of a great writer such as he.
I've read a lot of his little small pocket books.
Like The Longest Silence.
Yep.
All the permit stories and the tarpon stories and all that.
That's where I actually got turned on to McGuane, was with The Longest Silence. But a lot of his old books about, I read a book about dueling. These guys are duel with pistols that have wax bullets. So when you shoot, you get shot with wax.
You get thumped.
Exactly.
Well,
and the characters in it.
Right.
I mean, his character development is amazing.
Well, if you don't mind, I want to bring you back to when you were a lifeguard. Were you just surfing at that time, or was fishing in the picture then?
No, I always fished.
You always fish?
Yeah, as a little kid, I fished. I grew up in South Miami. I lived there till I was 12. I started fishing. The first memory I really have is with my dad. I was probably 7, and going to Matheson Hammock and fishing for snapper. And my dad wasn't around a lot when I was a kid. I lived a very unique life. I was born in Mexico, in the city of Mérida, inside the American consulate, because my dad wanted me to be on American soil when I was born. So I'd be an American citizen. Now, what we were doing in Yucatan at the time, that story, varies. I was always told my dad was a jaguar hunting guide. And every photo I have of my dad, he has a sidearm and a long rifle.
Wow.
But as I got older, I found out that my dad was working for the government. My dad spoke 7 languages, had a true photographic memory. And coincidentally, in the early 60s in Mérida, we were training folks for the Bay of Pigs invasion. So I suspect that's probably part of what it was. As I grew up in Miami, when my dad showed back up in my life that I remember, he was flying hurricane planes over Cuba out of Miami. I've been in the hurricane planes, seen it all. And then when I was 12, I moved to New Jersey. My mom took a job at Princeton University. And my dad was an iron worker for a few years. Then he was selling gold. Before you could sell gold on the open market. Before a citizen could sell it, he was a gold dealer. So don't really know a lot of what
he had. A big spectrum.
He did, and in and out of our lives, people would show up with gifts and things that were just very odd.
Gifts and guns.
Something from a Chinese general. A lot of Russian things showed up in our lives.
Wow,
it's pretty interesting.
So that's what he told you. He told you he was a jaguar hunter.
That's what I was told as a kid.
Did you ever get the truth?
Not really. After my dad passed away, my mom told some stories about him working for the government, and just when they were dating and how the mail would come. Everything would come with an envelope with just a number on it, not her address or a name or anything.
Wow.
It just showed up in
maybe
her mailbox.
CIA stuff.
That's what he worked for.
Yeah, CIA stuff. Wow, that's fascinating.
It's I'd love to hear the story.
Too bad he passed without sharing it.
I agree. And
are you mad about that?
Curious. Yeah. I would like to know more. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't super close with him.
Right.
He operated at an intelligence level way above everybody else. So even like when I was in high school, when I was playing football and baseball, athletics were just kind of a waste of time to him. Everything was about academics. And I remember I had gotten a D on a paper one time, and he got mad at me and had me write the dictionary word for word.
What?
Yeah, I did it.
Serious?
I did it for a few months, and I got to about D, and he let me stop. But every day I would come home, and I'd have to write 4 pages every day.
What kind of punishment did you receive from him? Spankings? Verbal?
Not very often.
Verbal?
Not very often.
Verbal abuse?
Not really. Just stuff like that. You disappoint me. This is what you need to do, and you need to do it today. And start on it now. Go in your room and do it.
So you respected him with just those words? Pretty
much. So I was scared of him. There were a couple of times when I remember I was probably 15 or 16. I was a big kid, always big kid. I was probably 175 pounds in high school, but played football and all. And I'd gotten up to get a drink in the middle of the night, and he had been in the kitchen, and we passed each other, just not knowing either of us were there, and he punched me in the throat, just out of reaction.
Oh, he saw the dark side.
So I feared for him, but I also respected him. You and I grew up in an age when you respected your parents. You respected all elders.
Right.
If a little old lady told you to go get that garbage can and move it to the other side of the street, you did it. You didn't say, what?
Yeah, you just do it.
So it was a little different time.
What, did he ever see your introduction to fishing?
No. Well, So I remember being a kid, my mom always saying, fish, 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 Michael. All you ever do is fish. You're never going to be anybody if all you ever do is fish. And when I became a lifeguard, I was kind of a disappointment. I'm an only child. And they never said anything, but I could tell I was kind of a disappointment to them. And then when I got my job writing for the Miami Herald, they were so proud of me. And it kind of went from there. And they did get to see me do, write for major magazines, write a couple books. I wrote
Being the
7
great
books
captain
total.
that you are, the voice for
Guiding.
captains for clean water and conservation.
They didn't get to see any of that.
What do you think they'd say now if they were to see where you are?
Oh, I think they'd be proud of me.
For sure.
Without exception. You just try and be as good of a person as you can be and let the chips fall where they are.
Yeah.
My mom was amazing. She worked so hard, did everything for me, made so many sacrifices. I was always loved. I never felt like I wasn't loved.
Right.
I had an amazing life. I wasn't, I grew up on the lower side of middle class. We never had extra money. We had 1 car, not 2 cars. Lived in houses, lived in apartments, but, very happy family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other than my dad not being there a lot. That's a big influence. You need your dad just to kind of set you straight on things and give you a lot of direction in life.
Was your mother pretty tough?
Not at all. My mother was a pushover.
Oh, cool. You had it easy when Dad was out of town.
I had it sweet. She was a sweetheart. She took great care of me.
Well, when you were a lifeguard, were you fishing at the time?
A lot.
And what did you see as a lifeguard through a fisherman's eyes?
Well,
Mullet runs.
The mullet run used
Snook
to be
stuff.
amazing. It was so different than it is now. It was a real mullet run. You would have schools of mullet that came. The school that would sit on the beach, and the same school would be there for weeks at a time. And it might be 3 miles long, 4 miles long.
Wow.
And then that school would move down, then another one would replace it. And, big snook, big tarpon, sharks, giant jacks, the bluefish that showed up. We always called the first bluefish that showed up hospital blues because all of them, they were all messed up. They'd have chunks out of them or big scars on them.
So who was chewing on them?
The sharks, probably.
Sharks,
the
probably.
sharks, spinner sharks.
But what was interesting about that is normally bluefish travel in schools of fish similar size.
So they might bite each other.
These were fish of all different sizes.
Right.
There might be a 10-pounder, might be a 2-pounder.
Because if a spinner shark gets it, he's dead. He's toast. He's not going to take a chunk out. He's going to take his tail
We
off.
also didn't have the amount of sharks that we have now. I mean, we had plenty of sharks, but not like we see now.
And that's because of the lack of longliners, if I'm not mistaken. Once they
Longliners
stopped the
and netters. There were guys that netted sharks, particularly in my area.
Right.
There were a lot of guys that did that. The bull shark problem that we see, I have sort of a different theory on it. Who knows? I'm as full of shit as anybody else. So what I did notice, right after the BP oil spill, a year later, all of a sudden we have big bull sharks everywhere. So we didn't have the juveniles inside. We just had giant sharks, and we had them everywhere. And I think when they sprayed all the dispersant, those fish that are up in the Mississippi Delta all moved down into the Gulf of Mexico. And
Came around the corner.
I think so.
And that's a very...
I don't know if I'm right about it, but it just seems logical. It was about a year after, maybe a year and a half after the BP oil spill, they showed up. We always had a barge.
Because the longliners were banned much earlier than when that happened.
That's correct.
So there's a big time gap. And then all of a sudden the bull sharks have arrived.
Yeah, but is there a depletion of sharks in Louisiana and Texas? And
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question.
That would probably put the two together there.
Right.
But I just know we have one barge we call the shark barge where they would show up all the time in the summer. We only had them they would show up around Father's Day and be there till about the end of August.
And this is in Stewart.
And then all of a sudden they're on every wreck. They're everywhere in 1 year.
It's almost like you can't even go out and sport fish now.
Very difficult.
Because you're feeding sharks, right?
Yeah, and it's an issue, and it's one that really needs to be addressed.
Because that's what BTT did with the Western Dry Rocks. They basically shut it down because all the permit they were catching were getting eaten by sharks.
I've talked to both BTT and the Billfish Foundation about this. When you think about it like this, I wanted to do a survey with 20 offshore captains and have them keep track of how many sailfish they have a year, and actually all fish that they have eaten by sharks. But if you think about it, if you take the East Coast, if you take 20 sailfish guides up and down the coast, and if they're losing
30%,
if they're losing 20 fish a year, 20 sailfish a year,
out of how many fish?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter if they're just losing 20 sailfish a year
times 20
per captain.
400, yeah.
That's only 20 captains. Well,
Yeah.
There's probably 2,000. So are we losing 40,000 sailfish a year?
And that's being conservative, 20 sailfish.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I mean, we need to address it because we're seeing the billfish runs are not like they used to be. The dolphin runs are not like they used to be. The cobia are gone. You know, the days of catching 15, 18 cobia a day on fly, that's gone.
And that's because when you hook them, the sharks eat them.
Sharks eat a lot of them. Yeah. And also because people will stay there and keep fishing until they get to one that they can keep.
Right.
You know, if a permit or a cobia, if anything I have gets sharked, I leave. I'm gone right away.
Because the shark's not leaving. It's a food platter.
Sooner or later, it's going to get full and you'll land it. But okay, now so you caught one of the 6 cobia that you hooked, but you killed 6.
Right.
You know, that's ridiculous.
And that's what's happening in Boca Grande for the tarpon.
I agree.
I just don't understand how how they can still fish there. The fishing game, I do not. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Where you hook 11 tarpon, they're killing 6 by the sharks.
How many of them let go live?
All day long.
You know.
Anyway, let's go back to a fun place. Tell me about when you first knew that you wanted to be a fishing. Fishing was going to be a big part of your life, and you hadn't yet understood that was going to be your connection to making money.
Oh, geez. Well, so, I mean, I remember as a kid wanting to be a fishing guide when I was probably 9 years old.
Really?
Yeah. You know, when they ask you in school, what do you want to grow up to be? Everybody wanted to be a fireman or an astronaut or a policeman. I wanted to be a fishing guide.
Was there somebody out there that inspired you to be a guide?
No, I just loved it that much.
But that's not catching. That's finding fish.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted to be the guy that found them. You wanted to be the hunter.
I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed being on the water. I just wanted to make a career out of being on the water all the time. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. But
over how many years now as a guide?
I've been a guide 36 years, and that's kind of an interesting story. I didn't plan to be a fishing guide. You know, I was writing for the Miami Herald. I was working in a tackle shop, and I was working on the beach as a lifeguard. I've always worked 3 or 4 jobs my whole life. And, you know, sort of the trade out. If you're lucky enough to find a career that you love that pays very well, it's great. If not, then you find the things you love and do multiple ones and work a lot of days and still make the money that you can do it and be happy. So I had lots of jobs, but I loved every job. It was never like working.
Awesome.
So I feel very fortunate. In fact, I read a survey, maybe it was Fortune magazine, that said 63% of the people in this country hate their job. And
I'm surprised it's that low.
I can't imagine hating my job. How could you, if you hate your job, fucking quit.
But people
do something else.
People get stuck.
Yeah, they get in the rut.
They get stuck. You have 2 young kids. They have children. They're not even out of college, maybe just after college. They don't have their career set. They're not making a lot of money. They have kids. Now they're behind the 8 ball for the rest of their lives.
Find your exit strategy. It may take you a couple of years, but find it. You know,
I've always been a proponent for finding what you love to do and be the best at it, and the money you'll find. And if you don't make enough money doing what you do, just cut down your expenses, and you're still in a happy place.
Right? And you know, a lot of it's how you live, how you choose to live.
Right. Smaller house, smaller cars.
So I didn't plan to be a guide. I was working in a tackle shop, and the New York Mets had built their spring training stadium in Port St. Lucie. And I'm in the shop one day, and Davey Johnson was a coach of the Mets, and Mel Stoudemire was the pitching coach. And they came in, and they wanted to go fishing. There weren't I think there was 1 or 2 guides in my town at the time. And those guys were busy. And they're just trying to get out and fish. And I said, well, I'm going tomorrow. If you guys want to go, you're welcome to go with me. And we took them out on the ocean. The big jacks were out on the beach. And it was pretty funny because they're both bait caster guys, bass fishermen, 17-pound test, topwater plugs. We pull up on those jack schools, and they're all 30 pounds or better.
I can only imagine.
They double up on them, and they're going to get spooled. And the fish go in opposite directions, and they're going to get spooled. And I'm like, well, which one do I chase? And Davey goes, I'm the manager. Chase mine. So we broke Mel's off. We chased Davey's down. And so we came back, and next day they came in the shop, and Davey pulled me aside and said, I've fished all over this country. I fished with a lot of people, and you'd be a perfect fishing guide. You have the knowledge, you have the personality. It just would fit you really well. And I just said, I kind of laughed it off and went, that's just not me. I don't know if I can do that. And, went home and just kind of thought about it. Next thing I know, I got my captain's license. And
so he inspired you to jump, to take
kind of crazy story.
The leap of faith.
And we were friends for some time. He was dating this lady who was involved with Worldwide Wrestling, WWE, and I would pick her up and take her to the ball game, and we'd sit and watch the game, and she would tell all these stories about all the wrestlers and the managers, and this guy's going to get hurt. He hurt his knee, so he's going to lose the belt, and then go on rehab. She knew all the background stuff. It was pretty fun.
Tell me about your first guide trip. Were you pretty nervous?
Yeah, real nervous. And, fortunately, the fishing was so amazing. The Indian River, was lush seagrass, not very many people fishing at the time. So it was nothing to go out and catch, even not being very experienced, 20 snook, 25, 30 snook, a 10-pound trout on topwater plug. It wasn't really a big deal.
Do you remember your first trip?
I don't.
Really?
A mutual friend, Cody Rubner.
Oh God.
He mentioned something about one of your clients in their first trip, like compound fractured his leg or ankle.
That was one of the guys who stepped on a Gatorade bottle, and remember Gatorade used to come in a glass bottle.
Yeah.
Stepped on a Gatorade bottle and compound fractured his leg.
Just by stepping on it?
Stepped off the deck. That was my first year guiding.
Sounds like
I had that, and I had a guy and his wife who got in an argument, and the wife punched him in the face and broke his nose. And they just started screaming at each other, and he's going, I brought you down for this amazing trip, and this is how you treat me. And she said, well, yeah, if you didn't know your secretary, we wouldn't even be here. And she's going, take me back to the dock. I'll pay you, and I'm going, I just want you two out of my boat. And it was funny because I didn't, when I was a lifeguard, I was an EMT, and I usually carried a jump kit. But at that time, I didn't carry one on my boat.
What's a jump kit?
It's a full first aid kit that has trauma dressings and everything. And all I had was your normal fish towel, stinky fish towel. And that's what the guy had to hold on his nose. So I take him back to the dock. The wife when we pull up, she's got the money in hand. She's out. She's out of the boat heading for the car. And the guy's apologetic, just saying, I'm sorry. I didn't expect this, Women.
You've seen it all.
And I'm just going, yeah. And she got in the car and drove away.
Anybody poop in your live well?
Not in mine. I've yet to have that. But, the old Pathfinders, the front seat used to flip forward. And it was nice because girls could kind of get behind that seat. They'd have a console on one side, and kind of go potty. So it was kind of a potty well.
Where were you first guiding out of? Where you are now, up in the Jupiter area? Stewart?
Yeah. So, back then there was Greg Gentile guided in North Fork, Jerry Metz guided in Fort Pierce, and I guided in Stewart. Was one guy who did freshwater in the savannas, but that was about it at the time. There was maybe one or two, not very many. I can go back. I can remember when there was 3 flats boats in my town, and I owned one of them.
What year was that?
oh gosh, 87.
When did Rufus come into your life?
Good question. Place in the year, I couldn't tell you.
But
Rufus is a trip.
You know what he said? I called him. I mean, I went to the Amazon with Rufus for 2 weeks.
He's an amazing dude.
He's unbelievable. I said, give me some intel on Mike. He said, he is the best. All the sponsors love him. He's going to sit at the right hand of God at some point, whether it be for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 months. He said, there is nobody that is a better father than you and a better friend than you. Coming from Rufus.
That's touching. Yeah. And I can tell stories about Rufus. So Rufus grew up on Palm Beach Island. And he just liked to fish. And that's sort of how we met, was fishing. I think I met Rufus. I was working in the tackle shop, and we had a big croaker run on the beach. And I took him out to the beach to snook fish for those summer fish with live croakers. And back then we would take a garbage can, a 5-gallon bucket with a cast net in it. We'd take it out. We use a 5-gallon bucket to fill the garbage can with water. You throw the net, you get 30 croakers. And 30 12-inch croakers would last 3 fishermen 45 minutes maybe.
Wow.
I mean,
is that how many bites, or you were
that's
just
how many bites you get? Yeah. I mean, it changed. Back then, 50, 60 snook days were pretty normal.
Holy cow. And how big are these snook at the time?
They're all big breeders. They're all 20-pounders or up. It was crazy. They would school up on the beach, and that was part of what I would do when I was lifeguarding. I'd get a break, I would put on a mask and snorkel, and I would go swim up and down the beach. And I'd swim up, and I'd come up on a little reef section, and there'd be a whole bunch of fish. And then when I come back, I'd write down what the tide's doing, where they're sitting. So I got it pretty dialed really quickly.
Did you ever bring any rods to the lifeguard stand, and after fishing just run over and start whacking stuff?
Oh yeah, rainy days.
Nobody
lifeguards are just poor boys, So if I can go out there and catch a snook, and 4 guys or 5 guys can have dinner, we did that all the time. And there were days. This is funny. I had wanted to get a date with this girl. It was a girl who came to the beach all the time, and I wanted to get a date with her forever. And I finally got a date with her. We were supposed to meet at this club in Jupiter. And after work, it was fall mullet run. There were tarpon everywhere. So I went out, fished some baits, caught 2 tarpon, got in the water with them, released them, and ran home, took a shower, run down to Jupiter to meet her. And I'm sitting at the bar, and I'm just kind of hanging out. And my hands have a lot of hair on them, and I'm just kind of hanging. I'm looking, and I see this. She's sitting next to me. I see this big line of snot of tarpon slime on the back of the back of one of my fingers. And I pick it up, and it's just like this big snot. And I'm laughing. I tell the story of her, and she said, she laughed for a little bit, and we're talking a little bit, and then she excused herself to go to the bathroom and never came back.
Obviously, she was not a fisherman.
She was not impressed with the guy who smelled like fish.
What was the best mullet run you've ever seen?
It
was probably so often you can't pick one out. It was
all really good.
Yeah.
Really good. You could stand on the beach and look north and south and find a mullet school. There were that many mullets.
Always coming.
Always. And there were tarpon in them. Always.
Now, when I first got down here to Florida, I would say probably close to 40 years ago. And John Glorio was a friend.
Remember John?
I used to hire John to teach me and to take me fishing. He taught me how to throw a cast net.
He had an egret.
I had the egret too. I bought one, and I started every fall running around and looking for these mullet runs and trying to figure out how to catch tarpon, always trying to slow troll on the outside of a school, and I get my bait inside of all the thousands. But I remember acres and acres of fish flying through the air, and sharks too. And being a fly guy, I all of a sudden gravitated to the dark side. It's not a dark side; it's the fun side in the real world, because you're not going to catch a lot of fish.
You're going to catch a lot more fish.
You have a lot more fun for sure, and that's why you fly fish, because you want to make things more difficult.
That's correct.
You want to challenge yourself, but
and some fish eat a fly really well.
You know what? But if they're not eating a fly, I'm all, and Nikki too. We're going to throw anything.
We don't discriminate.
We do not. I get live mullet tarpon fishing. It's the greatest bite in the world.
Well, and I also understand. I think when you bait fish as well as fly fish, because you get so many more bites, you see so many more fish feed, you have so many more interactions with fish. I think it makes you a better fisherman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the guys who never do anything but fly fish are handicapping themselves.
I agree.
Because of the opportunity to see the fish in action and naturally feed.
You see what happens to the bait, and you see what happens to how the fish eats that bait. And so with a fly is a bait. It's just an artificial bait. You learn how to make the fly work and move like you've seen shrimp and crabs.
You understand the posture of the fish more. You just understand way more about the fish and its habits.
Were you pretty much always a bait guy with a small percentage of fly guys?
Well,
so does your heart gravitate to the fly side? Though you're a bait guy.
Fly fishing is my favorite thing to do. I love it. And nowadays, I'm probably about 50% bait and 50% fly.
That's high. That's higher than I thought.
It's pretty high.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
I really enjoy the fly fishing stuff a lot. And I really enjoy the clients. The problem for me now, and I wish I had done it earlier, is that the fish just aren't there.
I know.
Like they used to be. It used to be so easy.
I know you drove down today to Boca, and you told us that you fished all day. How was your day?
We caught a jack.
In 5 hours.
A jack.
One jack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really bad. It's getting ready to collapse.
And you had a live well full of live bait?
I did. I had pilchards and I had Atlantic menhaden.
So we just had a tropical storm move through South Florida here. Is that a result of that storm?
Nah, it has nothing to do with it.
Are you seeing this on a daily basis?
It has to do with the collapse of the fishery. So the Indian River itself, 10 years ago, was the most diverse estuary in North America. Now it's a moonscape. All the grass is gone. And this year, we're fortunate. We've had amazing water quality this year. In fact, today I saw sargassum weed up at Nettles Island, which is probably 8 or 9 miles upriver from the inlet. That's a long way. So the water's getting all the way up there.
Wow.
But
you're talking about a high tide being
on an incoming tide. It's taking it all the way up there, which is really nice to see the good water quality. We've always had this water that runs off from Lake Okeechobee. Well, since the 40s, since they built the St. Lucie Canal and started sending water our way. But about 9 years ago, in 1 year, all the grass died. Why?
1 year.
I don't know. My theory is, Roundup. They started spraying the lake real heavily, and
for weed control on the
just
banks.
Comes downhill.
Fuck.
But it killed the whole river's dead, and it changed the dynamic. Okay, so let's take April and May. Typical April and May 10 years ago. I would be on the grass flats. I'm not near the shorelines. I'm not on channel edges. I'm on the grass in the middle of nowhere, just me. I have no boat wakes going by. It just serene, beautiful as can be. I'm fishing 10-pound test, fishing live baits. Average day, 40 to 60 snook, 2 or 3 trout. The trout were your incidental catches. They just ate your big thread fins. And most of the trout are going to be over 6 pounds. Most of them are going to be over 8 pounds. And anything smaller than that, there's bluefish in that area, and the bluefish would eat the tails off them and then just eat them piece by piece. So, average day, you're going to catch 3 big trout, 40 plus snook every day, every single day. So in the month of April and May, I would probably catch, 100 trout over 6 pounds. And I didn't catch a trout last year, whole year. Not including big ones, none.
Is this savable?
It is savable. All we got to do is control the water, and the grass will come back. The problem is it's gone. So now you have a river where people fished for trout. There's no trout. People fish for redfish. There's no redfish. People fish for pompano. Then the pompano come through now. There's no food, so they just keep moving. So you have a good day, but everybody was spread out. Now the only fish to fish for is snook. So there's nobody trout fishing. You can't catch a trout.
So everybody's on the docks.
Everybody's
on every
and the only
fish.
place the snook are is on the shorelines because there's no grass in the middle. So all you have is shorelines. So they're just getting beat unmercifully. And, I would say my average catch this year on snook would be 8 on a trip.
Average.
Yeah. And this is my 36th year. Like I don't have an ABC spot. I got 3 alphabets I can go through. If you're a new guy and you don't have very many spots,
you're toast.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
Well, we saw you up at Tallahassee. What was the outcome of that in your eyes?
Well, I think the bill got, the bad
passed.
parts got taken out of it. The worst parts got taken out of it. That was really my first time being in front of the Senate and seeing politics at work. And, as you're watching it, it's just kind of theater. It's the outcome's already been decided.
Yeah, you don't understand the results of what their words are saying.
It's sad. I think
But
politicians have their own agenda, and they don't vote the will of the people like they're supposed to.
They vote with their pocketbooks.
I think they vote with their own pocketbooks. Yeah.
How do you fix all that? Because you can't take
you know
away the
how you
money.
fix
The
it?
money's going to keep coming.
Well, so what if you limit how much you can raise, and anything you raise after that goes to your opponent, and each of you can only have $200,000? Then you're going to have to run on the issues.
That's
that's
interesting.
a great idea.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But that'll never happen.
It'll never happen. Of course, it's like term limits.
Yeah,
right.
Term limits are never going to happen because the people who would vote for them are the people who take advantage of it.
So what would it take, hypothetically, to see a new world order, if you will, and whether or not you think that would ever, in your wildest dreams, come to fruition? Because some of the guys who own the big sugar stuff are fishermen.
Mm-hmm. But you don't think you're seeing like pieces of the new world order with Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party movement and Black Lives Matter movement? It's like people are getting fed up, and they're getting fed up with politicians having their own agenda and having the option of, voting for the least worst candidate, which is crazy. Like, we can't come up with better leaders?
Right.
Are you kidding? We don't come up with better leaders because of people who are in politics. You have to be able to compromise yourself to be in politics. And that's who we're getting, people who are willing to compromise.
It's a sad thing.
It is a sad thing.
Do you think that will ever flip?
I think we'll probably see a revolution at some point. I don't know. I mean, that's what always happens in every country. Revolution turns it over.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because we're going to get slammed by politics and shit, and people hate that.
Well,
but
I know.
I get stuck in politics because of my work with Captains for Clean
Yeah,
Water.
sure.
Right. And that's why we had to go to this conversation briefly, because it was a big issue just recently. So, as Nikki said, what is it now for you as a guide for the future?
Well, this is what I think is the reality of where we are.
You kind of relocate where you fish and avoid that
I work harder than I've ever worked before, and it should be easier. And with all my experience, things should be easier. It's harder.
Yeah.
And there's less fish. And the last thing I want to hear anybody say is we want to go snook fishing. I want to do anything but snook fish.
What's your favorite fish?
But when someone says I don't want to go snook fishing, it's like, what do you do?
Well, like now, I mean, I can go offshore and live chum. I can go tarpon fishing on the beach. I can go permit fishing.
Right, but inshore, you're pretty limited to snook fishing.
Just don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just leave them
I
alone.
want to do anything but be there.
But it's blowing 20 miles an hour.
You're stuck.
You're stuck.
That's what you're doing. And the same, a lot of the wintertime, you can't get out It's just not going to happen. So you're snook fishing.
What's the best time of year to have somebody come fish with you now, and what are they going to be catching?
Summertime's pretty amazing, and it all depends on what you like to do. Like my very favorite thing to do is offshore live chum with a fly rod. Just go out there and start,
chumming pilchers,
and see who shows up, whether it's tuna or wahoo. Or
I remember Nikki. I remember when I first started doing this. You see these explosions starting to happen because you've been chumming for a while, so you got a long slick.
You have like a trail of tears.
Yeah, and all of a sudden shit started coming, blowing up.
I did that with Ron Dora quite a bit.
Right,
it was so fun.
So much.
Ron's
fun.
a great guy.
Yeah,
very good fisherman.
I love Ron. He's a great guy.
Well, so I love that because you don't know what you're going to get, and the opportunity to just sort of hand feed fish. A sailfish will come in and you throw him a bait, he eats a bait. You throw him a bait, he eats a bait. You throw him a bait, he eats a bait. Then you get your shot with the
Does that happen in the summer?
All the time.
For the sailfish?
All the time.
Really?
Our summertime sailfish is better than our wintertime now.
Wow, and you got soft seas. You don't have to go out there and throw up all day.
Flat calm, big fish. Fish are coming out of the Yucatan. The fish that are in Isla Mujeres in the spring are up here spawning in the summer.
Oh, is that right? Kidding.
Yeah. So
is that proven by tags?
I think that's how it is.
Really?
Somebody from the Billfish Foundation told me that. And they show up right on Father's Day somewhere there, and they last, well into July. This year they went all the way to August.
No kidding. Because you've always heard, the north wind in January and February where everybody's
best fishing's when it's
killed.
rough.
Same in the summer too?
No, in the winter.
But in the summer, it's okay.
It's flat calm.
They're there.
There are days when you're running and the sails are all up on top, and they look like palm fronds. Their sails are up. They're just basking on the surface, and you're running along. It just looks like palm fronds everywhere. And you run up to them, throw right at them.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You can just feed these fish
with a pilchard. You just take up. You can slide up and just flip to everyone.
Why are they on the surface? I'm just trying to relate it to tarpon fishing.
I have no idea.
Laid up sailfish.
I have no idea, but they're all up on top, and then the same. They're in pods of like 6. So if
motors don't bother them.
No, if you throw a handful of pilchards out, one comes up and you hook him, he's got 2 with him, and you throw to them, you're hooking them
just like a dolphin.
All of a sudden, there's fish all around the boat.
Really?
It's pretty crazy.
So everybody out there that's listening to this podcast, don't worry about winter fishing. Come fish with you in the summer.
So here's an interesting thing. We're talking about the for lack of a better term, death of the inshore fishing in my area because of the lack of habitat, because of the total loss of habitat. Probably 75% of the habitat's gone now. Folks that fish offshore, folks that fish in Jacksonville, Miami, the Keys, they go, this issue doesn't pertain to me. Why do I have to worry about it? And I want you to think about this. When people that live where I am can't catch fish, where do you think they're going next? They're going to tow their boat to where the fish are. And if that's where you are, if it's offshore, when it's flat calm, there's 10 times more boats out there because the little guys, they're done fishing on inside. Everybody's going offshore.
Right.
So the offshore people need to deal with it too. The guys in the Keys, everybody's going to run down to the Keys to fish because that's where the fish are.
Right.
And I mean, they've already seen that.
Mm-hmm.
West Coast, it's sort of the same. When there's a red tide there, everybody's going north or they're going south. So these water issues in Florida, they affect everybody.
Right. It was interesting. I was seeing a post that you posted a couple of days ago, but you had a big ball of tarpon you're fishing for, and the jet skis came rolling by. But tell me about your tarpon fishing this time of year, because not obviously, because a lot of people don't understand this, but after the worm hatch and the big full moon in June, the new moon in May, the new moon in June, those fish go offshore from the satellite tags that we found out, and they spawn in 400 feet of water, and then they gravitate north. You've got to have a great tarpon fishery up there.
We have an amazing
this
tarpon
time of
fishery.
Year, right?
Yeah, amazing.
But do you find them mostly going north, or do you have southbounders as well?
I fish southbounders on Labor Day. Fish to school going southbound, but the southbounders don't eat very well for some reason.
We've always seen in the Keys too, the northbound fish bite so much better.
So much better.
Are they hungrier because of they've spawned and they're tired? They've been traveling.
You see a lot of the southbound fish are always green. The northbound fish, you'll have the brown fish in them. You'll have the different colored fish in the northbound ones. You never see it in the southbound fish. They all seem to be green to me.
We spoke about that in the Dave Dankert podcast. I want to get I want to get your take on that. What do you think the color change? What's your theory?
If I was going to guess, it's like a lactic acid thing. They're probably swimming. They're traveling hard. They're pushing hard, and they're just short on energy, and they're looking for something to eat.
And those brownback fish are swimming softer and slower. And
I've always said, I've done these presentations, and when I was fishing tournaments, we'd see like a string of fish that are, sliding north. And if you have a brownback fish, I always wanted to get my fly to that fish.
That's the one that's going to eat.
That's the one that's going to eat.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, why is this fish brown? And the others might have blackbacks or green. And I kind of thought that the Florida Bay fish in the backcountry, the tannic water, they might have more of a browner copper color. And with the big super tide, they get out on the ocean and they get stuck with a string of fish going north. And all of a sudden you have this backcountry fish with an ocean swimming school.
Maybe.
And those backcountry fish have always eaten so much better. And I'm thinking, maybe it's not because he's tired and he's hungry. It just might be a fish that's come from a zip code that doesn't know any better.
But that's not really applicable to where Mike's fishing.
I get that, but I'm just
I'm just saying that's interesting that he's seen it up there.
Right, but
we see it all the time.
But I'm just relating to what I've seen and how that might apply to the brownback fish that you see.
And it may be.
Do you have backcountry fish up there that may find their way out on
our backcountry fish are black.
Oh, wow.
They're not brown. But I also see typically late season, typical 10th of July, somewhere around there, entire schools, and usually in the afternoon, whole schools brownback. And I mean, it's just money. You can do the dumbest thing in the world. You can take a dead thread fin and just splat the school. And they're all going to go apart. They're all going to come back together, and one of them's going to eat that dead threadfin every time.
So you're looking for a brownback fish.
If you see that, I'd tell my clients that, that's the fish you want to throw. You may want to throw at that big one on the front. It's not a green one may eat. The brown one's going to eat.
Going to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally that different.
I remember I used to fish up there with John Glorio, and we used to net these pilchards, and I think Butch Constable and the guys up there used to chum these schools and get them, rolling on these chum baits. Yeah, and then we'd throw interesting. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know anything about that.
You throw a white fly in there.
That means shut your mouth, Dad. That means shut your mouth.
So you don't free cast flies to these fish. You typically chum them up.
It depends. We free cast flies all the time.
Does it work well?
It does, particularly morning when they're all floating.
Low light.
You get out. We have a couple areas that we know they're going to sit. And you get out there, and when they pop up, when they're just barely moving, that's when they eat really well. And they'll eat obviously a purple and black, but I throw a lot of Able anchovy color type flies.
Right.
They eat those super well early in the morning. But you also, middle of the day, you'll have fish that you have really good shots at where you can post up and throw at them, and they'll chew. And I have guys that will not let me chum at all.
Well, they're authentic fly fishermen.
And
and they do well?
We catch fish.
Depending on how well they cast.
You're not jumping 10 fish, man, and it's not happening.
Yeah. Well, because it's really hard to jump 10 fish anywhere in the world if you're just throwing, a fly, unless you have a great run of fish and you're really good.
So, once those fish get moving, they're moving.
They're not eating.
They're moving. And all the chum does is stop them. They stop and they eat. And you completely halted them and lit them up.
I always heard stories, 15, 20 years ago about the power plant and how good the fishing was there. You'd go there and you'd catch permit and cobia and kingfish and just schools of jacks and acres of jacks. Tell us about those days of going up there, and what would you see and what would you catch? And has it changed that dramatically?
Oh, yeah. It's changed a lot. Well, first off, back when I first started doing it, I had an advantage, and I had a new boat. So, which means I have a new motor, and it's
15 miles from the inlet.
It's 13 miles from my inlet. It's 9 from Fort Pierce, and you just had to have a dependable motor, and a lot of guys weren't going to run it. So
because they're worried about their motors breaking down. Yeah. Really, only in 15 miles.
Yeah. That's back in the day,
like in the 1800s.
And you're also out on the beach in the afternoon. We didn't have cell phones, so it's not like you're calling anybody for help. And there was a lot of days when you're the only guy up there. And I remember the first time I saw a permit up there. There's probably 1,000 fish in the school, maybe more. I don't know. We caught them on clousers. We just went up there just to goof off. I remember we were catching permit after permit after permit. I think we caught 18.
Wow.
That day.
So we're interviewing Bob Clouser this week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing fly.
Right?
That
Clouser minnow catches
that's
everything.
funny you said
it's
that.
Probably caught more fish than any fly pattern in the world. The Deceiver maybe is another one.
I was going to ask you about that, and I might be stepping in front of myself, but so I put this, I put a poll up on Instagram for people to, post questions. And one question was, what is your favorite and most productive snook fly? Everyone knows you as such a prolific snook fisherman.
Yeah. So
is there one that stands out?
I throw a lot of polar fiber minnows. Anything that looks like a small bait fish, maybe 3 inches long.
Does it have to be that particular?
No.
In size?
Bait fish pattern, 3 inches, brown back, white body.
How do you make that presentation?
And here's the thing snook fishermen do is they fish way too fast. Stripping too fast.
Slow it down.
Slow. The fish is going to eat it on the paws. And a lot of times they dog it. And they dog it all the way to the boat. And then, you're on the end of the rod tip and they haven't eaten. And if you just stop it, they'll swim right up to it. And if they try and nose it, much like a cobia, if they try and nose it, pull it away from them.
Right, just like a tarpon.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And they get so pissed off. They just fully garbage it. And so just slow things down. No, I don't do real long slow strips. I do little short dink.
Little
dink,
bump.
Dink. Same with tarpon fishing. Almost like a bonefish strip. Little dip, dip,
Mm-hmm.
dip.
Same leads for snook as you lead tarpon. I've never done it, so I don't know. So 10 feet or do you?
Well, it all depends. If you're sight fishing them, 8 feet. I'll tell you, trout's a lot harder to catch than the snook.
Is it really?
Oh yeah, a lot harder.
Pretty smart.
Their vision's amazing. Their sound, the ability to track you and hear you is amazing. Back when I worked at Maverick Boat Company, I worked there for 4 years. And Scott Deal and I would fish on Wednesdays, and I would pull him, and we would sight fish the trout, big trout on the shorelines. And in a normal day, we might see 60 or 80 trout over 6 pounds. And if we caught one, we had a good day. They were very difficult.
Wow, like more difficult than permit.
And you could never throw the fly past the fish. I've never thrown a fly past a trout, laid up in shallow water and had it eat ever. It always had to land on its peripheral vision.
Short side.
With no splash. Just we fished little unweighted bait fish patterns, and it would land, and you usually got one strip, and he would turn and then just lunge and eat it.
All sidearm, soft presentations, long leaders.
If you throw overhead, they see you every time.
It turns over, hits too hard.
All you do is see them move.
Yeah.
If they move, they know you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Snook is very similar, but sometimes you'll get the suicidal fish that you'll throw and you'll bomb it and it'll move and it's moving. You throw it again and it's still moving. You throw it again and it eats. You can just go, oh, God.
If you had a chance to travel anywhere in the world today and fish or have your fishery as it once was, what would you do?
I would love to see my fishery like it was. I mean, there's just so much I remember about it and so many things that we took for granted and just didn't realize how fortunate we were. The giant schools of permit that we would have on the beach. When BTT had its permit tagging program, it was me and Joe Gonzalez and Carl Ball who were always vying for who tagged the most permit.
Right.
And their fish were flats fish. My fish are just out on the beach or out on wrecks where
They're easy.
you could catch 15 a day.
Right.
And it was just amazing though. You would have a school come by and people would say, how many fish are in that school? I don't know. It's 150 yards across. The fish are swimming this far apart and it takes them a minute and a half for the school to go by.
Wow.
And a small fish is 25 pounds.
Because I think the world record at one point was off the Lake Worth Pier.
That's
55
correct.
pounds.
Yeah, that's
something
correct.
Like
it was
that.
off Lake Worth Pier. We saw giants.
60?
I've had my hands on two. I caught one day that was so big, I couldn't touch my fingers when I grabbed his tail. And I had to get my hand under his belly and I had
Sound
to
like a tarpon
get
tail.
under his head, pull
Peduncle.
it in the boat. And that was back before cell phones. And I bought a 60-pound boga grip when they first came out, just so if I ever saw that fish again, I could
weigh it.
And somebody liked the stuff that was in my boat a lot more than I did one day. Took all my stuff off my boat. And you don't realize some of the things that you lose when your boat gets robbed. And I was out fishing and we caught another giant like that. And I went to go get my boga grip because I have to know how big it is. And I'm like, shit, it's gone.
Well, you speak about how difficult the fishery's gotten. I'm very curious to. Do you still have that fire? Do you still get excited to go fishing on a daily basis?
I do. I love it. And the problem is there's so many pressures on the fishery for what is left. So it's just very difficult, and you can either adapt or you cannot adapt.
Right.
What I do a lot now, fish at night when there's so many less people on the water. Like our during the fall mullet run on the inside, our tarpon fishing used to be amazing. All day long, tarpon blowing up, skyrocketing in the mullet. If a mullet came around a corner, a tarpon would just sit on that corner and just blow them up every time they came around. And you threw a mullet, you got bit on the first cast. And now, the first boat that drives by there, it's over.
Puts them down.
They blow them up.
But at night,
Yeah.
it's still going on. Still very good. If you
okay.
if you want to go catch a 20-pound snook tomorrow, we can go do it tomorrow.
Wow.
It'll be on a bridge in the dark, but pretty much going to happen.
What about Tommy Green and Copeland and
I remember
David
Tommy Green.
Justice and all those guys that used to follow the tides all the way from like Jupiter to Miami, catching all those big snook off the bridges?
Yeah, 10-cent bridge.
I used to see those guys a lot.
Did you ever do all that?
I did. So when I was younger, I was, for lack of a better term, ego-driven.
Like all of us.
I think that's part of being young.
Yeah.
And so I snook fish. I fished straight 100-pound test off the bridge. All I wanted to do was catch the biggest snook. And I would fish big baits, big mullet, big bunker. And I had a way, back then you had bridge gaffs. There were no size limits on them on upper side. But when I started, you could keep 4. They just had to be over 18 inches. And you'd have this big bridge gaff with treble hook on it. You'd get your fish up, you'd lower it down. And I had a thing where I always had a little cooler with some sodas. And I would pull that thing up and I'd throw it over on the pavement. And then I'd walk away from it. I'd leave the gaff hooked in his face.
How big is this fish?
30 pounds, 32 pounds, whatever. And I'd go get a soda. And I'd just sit back and drink my soda and let the crowd gather around. It was all about this crowd.
You rock star fisherman.
Well, so one time I was going out of town and I was on the Jensen Causeway at night and I caught a fish that was not remarkably big, 26, 27 pounds. And I let it go.
That's a pretty big snook.
Back then it was pretty common to catch those big fish. And I let it go, which is something you didn't do then. But I knew I was going out of town. I wasn't going to eat it, so there was no reason for me to kill it. And this is how I got into conservation. Every time I went back to that bridge afterwards, the whole little clan that was always there goes, that's that guy. That's the guy who let that giant snook go. And they remembered you for not a giant snook, not even a remarkable snook, but they remembered you for letting it go. So I started letting all my snook go. And
now they're really impressed.
Well, I guess. And or I was the fool, one of the two. And then I just started getting into it. And then I started realizing, if I start letting these go, then I can catch them again. and sort of all clicks. And I think you have to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes as an angler to kind of grasp on conservation. If you look at when you go to a IGFA legendary captain's dinner, you have all these old guys who are very respected in the industry, who've earned their boots in the industry, and they're being honored for the influence they've had in the industry. Every single one without exception talks about conservation, because they've all seen the changes in their lives. They've all seen the diminishing of their fishing resources. They've all seen what happens when you let fish go and when you protect them.
Right.
And have realized the value of a fish. They're too valuable to catch just once.
Yeah. When's the last time you kept a snook?
I killed one this year. I don't kill very many. So I'm debating this right now, whether I go to a no-kill policy on snook in my
Your boat.
On my boat. There's no kill policy on trout. And my theory on that is the big sea trout are genetically superior.
You've got to let them
those,
go.
I want those genetics in my river. I don't really catch little ones. If I do catch a trout, it's going to be big, because I'm using big baits for them more often than not. I want those genetics in my river, so I won't kill a trout under any circumstances. And now we don't even have any, so you want as many trout in the river as possible. With snook, so the numbers are going down, but we only have a limited amount of habitat, and the amount of fish that are going to be there is what the habitat will hold.
Supports, yeah.
Right. And I think there's so little habitat, there's always going to be that number of fish. I think they probably lay way more eggs than the habitat can support. I think a lot of them probably die off. So until we get the habitat back, I don't really see the fishery going up. Should I kill one or not? I don't know. I even feel bad fishing for them now. I mean, right. If I catch 8 fish in a day, 4 of them have 3 hook marks in them.
Have you ever thought about going back to riding full time? Leaving the water?
It's probably what I'll do when I get a little older. I love riding.
How old are you right now?
62. Just turned 62, June 1st. And I love writing. I just don't like being poor.
If you were to write continuously, what would you write about?
I want to write fictional novels, but more escapist fiction, what people are doing in their lives, that I can draw from experience. I'd started a novel where it's a year in the life of 3 people, one who's a lifeguard, one who's a mate on a charter boat, and one who's like a 16-year-old kid.
That's you.
And it pretty much is a reflection of things I've seen in my life, and just crazy stuff. But it's all made up. But it's fun. It's fine. I can sit and write it, and again, I don't know what's coming out of my mouth. I have no idea, and I just write it, and
it's fun.
Yeah,
writing.
I can write now to where it's enjoyable to me to write. So I'd like to get back to doing that.
How would you like to be known? How would you like to be respected?
I think I am respected as a.
Oh, you're respected for sure, but not only as a great fishing guide and a great friend, like what Rufus said, but when it's all said and done, what are you most proud of?
By far, I'm most proud of my kids and the people they've turned out to be, which is just amazing. It's surprising.
But you've been challenged because you've got an autistic daughter.
I do. I have a daughter with autism.
How did that challenge you?
Oh God, it's the greatest struggle you'll go through in your life. And she's my easiest child. She, you overthink it. You want so much for them, and you want them to have a normal life so much that you have to really work for it. And there's just things that you have to adjust your thinking. They're not any worse off than we are. They just think differently than we do. Their social interactions are different. They have trouble with social interactions, but they're just normal kids for the most part. And I'm fortunate. My daughter is high functioning, which is not normal with girls. Usually they're low functioning, and she's just been a blessing to my life. I can't even ever imagine her being any different than she is. And she's my easiest child. She's my sweetest child. I mean, loving, just a great kid. in the fishing realm, where I would like to be thought of it is sort of as a mentor. I've taken a lot of guys under my wing and showed things. It's fortunate as a writer. What I would do is I would find who's the best at everything. I want to find out who's the best at catching big trout. That was Jerry Metz. And I would go fish with Jerry and write a story about it. And Jerry would show me things and he'd go, please don't write about this. And I go, no problem. But I didn't forget it.
Right.
And that's sort of as we go, we gather. But to have the opportunity to fish with all these amazing fishermen and learn from them. And then just that's what I think the writing part of me was. I was just trying to share that knowledge base with others and show them how to do it. And, these days they call me the mayor of the guides in Stewart because I'm the guy that's got to step in on all the drama and, break things up or go talk to people and tell people.
You have a voice of reason.
Yeah, kind of seen it all. And just, if I know this, like this summer I had to go tell somebody that, some of the guys were having problems with the way he was doing some things. And, word got out. Mike Holliday, yelled at me today. I didn't yell at him. I told him, people are getting mad. You need to change these things. But I know if I don't say anything, it's going to blow up. And it's going to turn into this giant drama. It's going to be new guides against old guides. I'm too old for that crap.
Right. But you're too old, but you're taking on that responsibility.
I think it's inherent in all of us
to
take on that responsibility.
I mean, it's work that needs to be done, and you cannot say no to that.
I was going to say, that must feel good as there is a conflict and there is an issue. People look at you to try to defuse the
sometimes
problem.
It's good. Sometimes you're just like, oh, man, really? Really? You can't just pull that guy over and talk to him? So it's a trade-off. Sometimes I have to guilt people.
So they call you the mayor of the guides.
Yeah, they do call me that.
I love it.
Mayor for short.
Yeah.
Well, you've been a great friend for a long time. We love fishing with you.
It's been a while since we fished. We need to go do that.
I know.
The offshore stuff's getting ready to light up. We should definitely go do that. If you ask my favorite fish to fish for, bonita on fly.
I love bonita.
It's my very favorite thing to do is
they're fast and
those
furious,
and watching them eat it, and the bite's incredible, and it's so relaxed. You almost don't care if you catch one or not.
And anybody can catch a bonita.
But after you get the bite and fight one, you got to do it again. Like you're not put the fly rod down. You can't stop and eat. You can't. Like I just need one more. I need one more. I need one more. And, that's sort of the part of fly fishing that we all love. We all love that little challenge. We all love the beauty of the bite and the different styles in the way the fish feed and getting them to do that.
I think as you mentioned this, that was my first real connection to saltwater stuff. I mean, I was in Belize, saw a tarpon eat my fly for the first time, but when I got back down here, I was with John Glorio, chumming offshore, catching bonita. That was my real first success with the saltwater fish. And they sprint so fast, and they clear the line, and they rip stuff apart. It's like, and they're easy because you can chum up like 1,000 a day back then. Mm-hmm. And it was like,
well, and
it was the candy store was happening.
When you look at the average saltwater fly fisherman, they don't pull on a lot of big, strong fish. So this is a really good opportunity to learn a lot. Mm-hmm. It's real good for coaching people. Like you show people how to lift with your legs and how the right angle to have the rod. And that's a great fish to do it with.
Right. Clear line. It happens right now.
Oh, my God.
100%. Because when you're teaching them, when you're tarpon fishing or permit fishing, you might catch one
Well, you only
a day.
get how many shots do you get?
Exactly
Here
right.
you can beat on them and beat on them and beat on them, or lack of a better term. You can teach them and teach them and teach them. And then eventually they pick it up and you're like, you're doing it. You can start giving them the positive reinforcement. You got it now, dude.
But I can't help saying that one of my favorite fish on the ocean up there is the spinner sharks.
They're crazy.
Oh my God. When I started working with Hardy and developing rods and testing rods and reels, it's like, you got to go catch a spinner shark, chum them up and catch them with fly rods.
So I stopped
That's insane.
doing it.
Why?
Because
people can't do it.
No, I just ruin. I break a rod. I lose a fly line almost every time. And break rods.
Break rods.
So we get them at the power plant. We don't have them over open sand. So they're going to run around. There's boxes down there.
Oh,
and things.
right.
They're going to get on the structure. Minimum, you're losing a fly line.
Why don't you just fish with them down towards like Peck's Lake and down the beach?
Smaller
and
fish.
Find them. The big ones are at the boils.
The Peck's Lake ones are like 40 pounds. And they're fun. But, the ones at the power plant, those are those 100-pound. Those are those big, thick ones. The bite on a spinner shark, spectacular.
It's unbelievable.
The
They
way
jump, they spin.
Turn their heads as they're trying to grab the fly. I mean,
when people say sharks are like they poo-poo sharks, go catch a
they're
big,
a bad animal.
Black-tipped spinner shark.
They're a bad animal, and the same on the flats.
Yeah,
you catch one on the flats on a topwater plug, and he just burns through that shallow water till he hits the deep water, and then he jumps, and you just go
jump and
my
spin
God.
up your leader.
All you want to do is get your lure back.
And the same thing with jacks. Everyone poo-poos jacks. What's the difference between a jack crevalle and a giant trevally?
Similar.
The marketing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, so we have these big, right now, we have those big jack schools on the beach. And, every school's different. Every year is different. But in a 10-mile run on the beach, you may see, on a good day, 6 or 8 schools.
A big schools of how many? 500 fish?
Oh, at least, yeah. Well, it depends. So a lot of times the smaller schools are the bigger fish.
Right.
You get 100 fish. Those are usually the studs.
Right.
But you never know. I mean, I've seen you have the big schools and you throw and you're catching 15-pounders and all of a sudden you get a 40-pounder.
Right. Let me ask you, I've always found that those big jacks throwing a fly rod without bait and switch, a lot of times you can't throw far enough and tease them, strip your fly far enough to get the bite. So I've always found that if you throw a big plug with no hooks in it and chum the whole school up next to the boat, bring the whole thing. Tease them up and bait and switch. Is that how you do it?
Well, so it all depends. I would have clients that come from like a Miami Rod and Reel Club that needed to catch a jack over 30 pounds on fly. Okay, well, so we can make you catch 15 jacks or we can try and get you to catch 1. And we throw the teaser plug and you can look at the fish and kind of gauge
how big they are.
Yeah.
Which ones are coming.
Which ones are coming. And when you have the big ones on, then you say throw the fly. So it's really nice. And if it's not the fish that you want, you just stop the plug and the fish grabs it. And they realize it's not what they want. They let go. They go back to the school and you haven't spooked the school or changed anything.
Right.
Which is really nice. If you get tight to the school, we throw poppers on them a lot. And you throw the popper and the whole school piles on it. They come to the boat because you're close. That distance is so much closer. So you're going to spook the school. So you're throwing to catch a fish every time when you're doing that. And lately I've been throwing dragon tails on them. They've been eating those really well.
No popper head, just the dragon tail.
Just the dragon tail. And they eat it different. They nonchalantly eat it. Like you can throw it.
Like a tarpon eating a worm, kind of just sip it?
Eat it, turn their head back and swim. Just kind of and swim.
Because they know the worm can't. So they know the worm can't get away. Type of a scenario. The bait changes the bite.
It completely different. They're not piling on it.
Right.
Like they do on a popper.
I had Steve Cantner with me one day.
He's a great guy.
He's unbelievable. And
I love Cantner.
I love him. We did 2 TV shows together. And he went to go up to Peck's Lake and catch some Spanish mackerel to take home to eat. And so we're at Peck's Lake. And I really wanted to catch these big schools of jacks and catch a 35, 40-pound jack. And so we're in the Peck's Lake, and he's catching these Spanish mackerel on fly. And he says, "Hey, man, you got to get your fly and catch one of these Spanish. They're awesome." I'm going, "Steve, you got one more, and we're gonna go jack fishing. I don't want to catch one." He's like, I don't care. So we're running down the beach, and we see the yellow glistening in the light, and I get out ahead of him. And I had, from experience, realized I got to throw a spinning rod with and I took a big peacock bass plug, took the hooks off, and you got the propeller.
Oh, the wood chopper.
The wood chopper. And I said, "Steve, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to bring that entire school right into your lap, right? You chuck that fly in there." Well, 40 minutes later, Steve is still pulling on this big old jack. I said, "Steve, you're fishing now, right?" It's the greatest game, one of the great game fish of all fishing.
I call it welcome to the house of pain because there's no easy part about it. You know, you need to throw the poppers you throw are big. They throw like a duck. They throw horribly. and the fish are big, you know, and you're just going to pull them. And now, because of all the bull sharks, now the bull sharks dog the jack schools. So you get a lot of jacks eaten.
Yeah, that's sad.
And you know,
that's too
again,
bad.
you fight them 30 minutes. They never eat them early.
Right.
You wait till they get them right to the boat.
So your arms are about ready to fall off.
I'm just so glad jacks are not great table fare.
Right? Because everybody would fish for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody drives by them. It's like the bonitas. Everybody drives by them and complains about them. Barracuda. You know, have you barracuda fished?
Oh,
And I've eaten barracuda. Holy crap!
it's so good.
I'm not that tough.
No,
You catch them away from a reef. They're if you're in. We ate them in Venezuela.
Yeah,
at Las Rocas.
Belize in Venezuela.
Oh my God!
I could probably eat it if you didn't tell me it was barracuda. They stink so bad. All I can think about is like, you just say barracuda and I'm gagging.
Well,
is
you're
so
talking
good.
about the same thing as like once you first kill an elk and you're skinning it.
That's true.
You know, it doesn't
That's true.
smell so good, but when you get them on a Traeger, it's pretty tasty.
Those Traegers are amazing, aren't they?
Ah.
They changed my life. So I had a Weber grill, and I thought I was the grill master till I got a Traeger, and I could put bark on hamburgers now. My kids are like,
Do a little rub
can you
on
make
it."
anything normal?
No,
It's so easy.
it's the best.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Well, Mike, I gotta say, you've been really a wonderful, treasured friend. I think for Nikki and I for a long time. We fished when he was very young. Your friends really love you and appreciate and respect what you've done and your activism, you know, with what's going on in Tallahassee. And as we said earlier in the podcast, you're the voice of reason. You're the mayor.
Well,
And you got a lot of responsibility, and you stand up and represent yourself incredibly well.
thank you. I think we all need to be the voice of reason. And I'll leave you with this thought. You know, if we don't fight for it, it'll be gone. It literally will be gone. And now's the time. I mean, it's do or die. And it can come back tomorrow. All we got to do is, you know, get the water going back south to the Everglades where it needs it, and away from the coast where they don't need it. And we'll completely change the dynamic and bring our fisheries back. You know, if not, people are going to suffer in Florida. It's going to be very difficult for a lot of people. And the places that still are nice are going to wonder how they got turned into boom towns and just got overgrown so quickly, because everybody's going to leave, you know, these places to go where the fish are. Everybody wants to go to Panama City now because of the beautiful grass flats and how many fish there are and all. And, you know, all it takes is enough of that, and it'll change too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Sharing
you
your
guys
great
are easy.
stories. And
We can go hang out and go do this. We need to just go keep the papas flowing. We'll just sit here and chat more, tell more stories.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you, brother.
Really
Nikki, we need to
appreciate
get
it.
out and fish. Just
You're a great steward.
leave your dad at home and come on up. We'll do some things.
Let's
some
do
real
it.
fun.
So you can go back and just tell stories of like, wow, this is not what I expected.
I would love to do that. Thanks so much, Mike.
Pleasure's
Big
mine,
time.
guys.
Thank you.
When I saw it's West Side Story, when I saw it's just a